essentially that is what trauma is, when we are living into a story that we do not have a choice, right?
Mhm.
And so we need to go into the body and actually begin to understand at a sensational level what our felt experience with money actually is.
Welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, hosted by me, soul-fueled storyteller Kylie Fatchett. We dive into the truth-talking, unedited stories of metamorphosis, growth, and evolution. I deeply believe that sharing our stories holds transformative magic. Join us to listen to future humans, change agents, extraordinary ordinary people, healers, and paradigm shifters as we honour the power of our messy, magical stories. Let's get wild and finally fucking free together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another podcast. I have the beautiful Heenali, aka Sacred Weaver. I love that name. Oh my goodness. As soon as I saw you on Instagram, I was like, ooh, who is this? Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you?
Oh, so good to be here, Kylie. Thank you so much for having me on.
I feel like we've had this epic thunderstorm this afternoon, and I feel like it's the perfect setting for, I'm like, this is going to be a deep conversation. There's not going to be any shallow stuff. Wow. I was thinking, am I going to even have internet? But here we are on the other side of the storm. I'm so excited to have you here. Can you please introduce yourself for the people that don't already know of you and your work in the world?
Yes, of course. So I'm Heenali, also known as Sacred Weaver online, and I like to call myself an ancestral business coach, which I know is not necessarily a title that is very common in the business world or the coaching world. But essentially, my work is I have two pathways within my work. And the first pathway is what I like to call ancestral innovation. And it's basically this orientation that entrepreneurship is fundamentally an ancestral calling. And a lot of the women who step into entrepreneurship, into coaching, healing, are doing so because at a very deep level, they are hearing a call from their ancestors, from their lineage, from some ancient beings in the line, right?
Yeah.
And actually what they are doing when they move into entrepreneurship is they are hearing a call and they are remembering. They're remembering something about their bloodline which wants to be re-expressed into the world, right?
I've got shivers already.
I was so excited to be shivering.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm literally giving myself goosebumps right now, right? So yeah, that is the path of ancestral innovation. And so that's one thing that I love to focus on and help people into, like the remembering process. And the other pathway, which is actually the main pathway that I inhabit within my business, is working with women of color specifically, right? So really looking into how do we allow for the awakening of the revolutionary voices and visions of women of color? Because, a lot of my background is in racial equity campaigning. And I really do believe that our collective future, our ancient future, our collective liberation really rests upon allowing for the emergence of the voices and visions of women of color specifically.
Yeah.
So a lot of my work is also focused on helping women of color to thrive in business and to do so in a way that's spiritually and financially fulfilling, right? So that's me in a nutshell.
So many ways that my brain wants to go, because I want to actually let's start with, because I always love to find out, and you fellow storyteller, so you will understand this as well. I always want to understand the golden thread that weaves through your life that leads you here. So tell me more about the racial equity background, what you have done before, which has kind of led to this point.
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. I love storytelling. So, yeah, love it. So I actually worked in racial equity campaigning for about a decade. That was my line of work. That was my my calling and my career path. And To be honest, Kylie, like I've always been a black sheep in my family. Like I imagine you and probably a lot of your listeners can really relate to that, right?
Well, I mean, the name of the podcast probably gives us away, right?
Yeah,
It's like Black Sheep's Anonymous.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And I I had this desire to really campaign about racial inequity and to dismantle colonialism, dismantle toxic corporate capitalism. And it was not something I was seeing in my immediate family as like a thing that I had in common with anyone, right?
Nope.
But I followed that calling. I followed that calling. And to cut a long story short, at least in that bit, I eventually found out through my own ancestral healing work that my great grandfather was a freedom fighter in India and that he had actually been imprisoned for his campaigning work. And he had walked alongside Gandhi to liberate India from the British, right? And suddenly it was like, oh my God, this
Again
whole
with the remembering.
time.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
And
wow.
so my own pathway has very much been its own remembering process. And a lot of my racial equity work focused on telling the stories of women of color specifically, right?
Yeah.
So I would travel around the UK and I would hear the stories of women of color. Many of them were living, were undocumented, were living under the radar, were facing education, health, justice, inequities. And I would go to them and listen to their stories and actually, part of my work was in journalism and actually share those stories with the world. And I created a media platform to do that. And that was really where my eyes opened up to how women of color inhabit these in-between spaces.
Yeah.
And they actually have this very immediate experience of inequity and all of these things that we are all fighting against, right? But it's through them sharing their raw voices and really weaving their own stories into their visions for the world that can be so enriching for all of us.
Oh, you're speaking.
Yeah, and so that's really the root. That's the
You're
root of my
speaking my language because like as you're talking, and I would count myself in this as well. When we don't hear stories that are not our stories, we don't even know what we don't know, and we don't know how others experience things. I had a conversation with my friend today. She was walking as she was voice noting me, and she's like, "I'm going to come back in a second." And in the end, it was because someone had been walking behind her, and her comment to me was, "I just wish men understood how uncomfortable women can feel if they've got a man behind them, not changing pace." And I was like, "That's privilege, though, right? Because that is not his awareness or his story or his point of view. So therefore, it's not at all in his field of vision." And that is what happens when we don't hear the stories of people that aren't, may have completely different timelines and values and perspectives and issues and barriers and systems they're fighting against that, like, I have been more and more astounded at myself the older I get that I have just kind of brought into, I don't know, like, I mean, we all know that when we're younger, we receive conditioning. And I feel like, I'm just about to turn 50 and I'm like, I have spent so many decades like unconditioning or deconditioning all the stuff I was taught to be, the right way as a woman or the right way as a good girl or whatever, fill in the blank here. And now I'm like, oh, I'm finally shedding skins back to the rawness of who I feel like I am really, really inside without those layers on. And I just think, far out. I want to come back to when you say remembering, why are we remembering? What has broken the chain or the generational, I don't know. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the communication and the experiences that have gotten lost, that means we have to reconnect to them? How does it happen?
Oh, I love your question. A rich, beautiful question. And, I also want to just speak to that point about storytelling, right? There's something so enriching about meeting stories as opportunities to unlearn. Not learn, but to unlearn, right? And what can
So
happen when we actually meet a story from a place of, there is something about me inside of your story, right? Rather than us, because I think a lot of the time what can happen, and, I, I was an activist, I was in that space for like a decade, right? Is we start to like beat ourselves up with the privilege stick.
yeah.
And, I speak as somebody who also has privilege, right? I've
Yeah,
had
yeah,
a Western education. I'm light skinned. I'm able bodied. Like we all have different points of privilege. And it can be so easy for us to get into this space of like, I need to feel so bad about myself for having this privilege. And I need to go and find stories so that I can learn about why I'm privileged and they're not. But actually, I think that we can meet stories in a much more enriching way.
Yeah.
Where we're like, your story and your lived experience has something to teach me about myself.
Yeah.
And actually, that isn't a learning experience, an unlearning experience.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that's how I always feel like I have often said out loud, if I could just monetize interviewing people and learning about their stories, I would be one happy girl. Like this is my happy place. And the reason that I find it so juicy is that I always find this spark of curiosity, and now you've just put it into words. It's about the unlearning. Because it's like, what am I going to find in this conversation? Because I love having my my beliefs or my point of view challenged. And I think that's because I have always been a status quo challenger, like the black sheep thing. But I enjoy that. I enjoy the rub of the, not beating myself up, but like, wow, okay.
Yes.
What can I dismantle here that I may not even know that it is there? But it's that curiosity thing. I think that if you can approach someone's story with this lightness of touch, that's not like, this has to be hard labor, and it has to be, like a stickiness.
Totally. And I think that word curiosity is so valuable, inside of that approach. And I think that piece about what is it we're dismantling? And this comes back to your, the second part of what you were speaking of like, well, what is that remembering process?
Yeah.
What is it that we're remembering? Like, where did we forget in the first place?
Where did we lose it? Like,
Yeah. Yes. And this is a piece that, we live in a world of invisible systems. And, obviously a lot of my work is talking about racial inequity.
Yes.
And when I use words like racism, people, they have this idea that it's about, people on the streets calling you a name, or, people saying certain things, right? And it's not actually. Racism is a system. And it is something that is pernicious and interwoven into our institutions, into the way that we're educated, into the way that we are conditioned to perceive the world, right? And our world is made up of lots of different invisible systems. And within kind of our modern history, right? I'm not a history expert, but within our modern history, within the past couple of centuries, the dominant world system that has emerged and woven itself into all of our institutions and the way that we operate in the world is toxic corporate capitalism and colonialism. And these are ideologies that are all about the accumulation of material wealth at the expense of spiritual wealth.
Correct.
Right? Yes. These are ideologies that place profit over people. And
absolutely,
this is the story that we have been born into. We have all been born into this, right? And it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. It doesn't matter, where you live in the world, your age, your gender, it doesn't matter, right? We have all been born into this invisible system. And part of the remembering process is unweaving ourselves from those basic assumptions that have been stamped into us by these ideologies, right? And actually coming back to a remembrance of why we are actually here which is to remember, fundamental is to remember that we are worthy, that we belong, right? That we get to experience abundance, we get to receive, and there are no conditions that need to be placed upon, right? But those are orientations that don't work within a toxic corporate capitalist system, right? And that is why remembering is so revolutionary and so important to our collective inspiration and this project that we all have, right, to move forwards.
You have given me about 2,000 quotes for this episode already. So can you just calm your farm? No. Remembering is revolutionary. I mean, that to me hits me right in the core, just like that concept of rest being revolutionary. And as you're talking, this like profit over people, extractive versus regenerative, like all of these, and excuse me, I just keep on being reminded, that's the word, that because we're not talking about, we're talking about something that's like swimming in the ocean and not being able to see the ocean. It's just what we live inside of. So yeah, that actually, you've actually connected two things in my head for the very first time. So yeah, the remembering, oh, thank you. I love it when this happens. This is the other thing I love about interviewing people. Often there's things floating around randomly that aren't connected in my brain. And then I'm like, oh
wow.
I love that. I love it. When we're talking about, so when you say ancestral business coach, can we talk more about that? Like the term, and I actually just made up a term for myself today too. And I'm like, can I call myself that? And I'm like, you know what? Everything is like, where does language come from?
Up.
You know, like everything is made up. Like, and you know, how many years ago was it that somatic was like the word of the, you know, and now everything, you know, like we talk about it like it's, I don't know, as normal as walls or whatever. So, but it started somewhere, right? It came into the collective. Not that word didn't exist, but you know what I mean? Like, something that we, or like when self-love, that was years ago, but you know, 2 decades ago when self-love was the big thing, and it's like, now that's like old news. Anyway, forgotten my question. Oh no, ancestral business coaching. So yeah, tell me more about that, because when you were first introducing the innovation concept, answer the first question. I'm trying to double load you. Go for it.
Yeah. So I guess the fundamental perspective I have is that we are called into entrepreneurship. We are called into business by something much greater than just ourselves. And yes, we desire wealth. Yes, we desire money. We desire impact. We desire all these things, but we're doing it for something much greater than just us. And there is so much power in beginning to articulate what that greater vision is. And more often than not, I mean, I find this to be true with all of my clients and all of me as well, right? Is that it connects to a deeper story, right? Your story didn't begin with you. It began way, way back down your bloodline. And what if we can actually begin to excavate that and weave that into how it is that you are here to lead in the world, right? And the other piece is that, you know, I think business is meant to be a vessel for ancestral healing. Yes. And actually, and I'm sure you can absolutely relate to many times where you have noticed certain wounds coming up in you, certain old stories, certain old patterns, and your business, the spirit of your business has needed you to meet those patterns and heal them and reweave them. Well, those patterns, a lot of the time, they didn't originate with you, right? They came from people in your lineage. And by doing this work and by actually pursuing your own business dreams, you also get to heal so many generations that came before you, right? And the power of that, the reverberation of that down your bloodline is just so powerful. Like we're literally shifting timelines here by making this connection and orienting business in this way. So that's kind of what I really mean by ancestral business.
I love this. And this is why I think the word weaving and woven and weave, like I so resonate with it, because even way back, like this is my second time in online entrepreneurship. I had a bit of a corporate cage incident for a little while in between. Anyway, that's fine. We got over that.
I'm fine.
But even in my first business, and this is back in like 2011, I used to talk about this concept of, what we're here to deliver, and this medicine, like our message and our medicine is not so much about us. And in fact, I would say not very much about us. But it is all about how we can, I always imagine that there's all these woven, like these golden threads all around, the world. And we're all meant to be delivering our bit to this tapestry. And when we don't, it's deeply uncomfortable for us anyway, because as you say, there's this calling, and resisting it becomes ridiculous in the end.
Yep.
and completely not possible to do. But also we're not, there's a hole in the tapestry when we're not actually delivering our piece. And so as you're talking, I've always used that weaving thing, and I keep having these dreams actually of actually weaving with my hands. Like, and I'm like, wow, what is that about? Like, have I got some cool, like time bending witchy person in my generations? But yeah, I find that the concept quite fascinating. And although I spoke about it back then, I probably didn't feel it in my body. And now when I speak about it, I'm like, this is truth. Like, this is I always say the truthiest truth. Like, when I'm working with a client, like, is this the truth? Is this the truthiest truth? And yeah, I feel that so deeply in my bones. And I feel like there's this quickening happening where there's lots of things breaking and lots of, oppressive structures being brought into light and broken down. And I'm like, this is why there's so many of us with this very strong calling, because I believe that it's part of that, we need to all come out from the woodwork, do your thing, deliver it to the world. And also by definition, creating that, the ripples of, impact and influence and also income, because then the money is in the hands of people that, like we need to break that down. That is one of the biggest issues. If we've got wealth only in the hands of a few who happen to be, dudes that are white and old, obviously we're just going to proliferate the same system that put them in power, which is part of the problem. Yeah. So I'm very interested to talk about money. And I mentioned to you earlier, like I come from, a long line of Irish Catholic people. My dad was born in the Depression. I definitely got the conditioning of like very, very hard work for money. Money doesn't come easily, etc. And I know a lot of what the work that you do in your containers is around healing money stories and money conditioning. What do you feel? Do you feel like there's co-remembering around all of that conditioning, or does it become a very different ocean, I guess, for BIPOC? And also my kind of secondary question is it different again for, as you said, you have privilege yourself, you were, educated in a certain way, whatever. So how does the money healing that's required change as we change realities of what we receive growing, I guess, is my question. That is a very big question. Glad we've got another 3 hours.
Good question.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And, I guess the answer wants to be as big as that question, right? Because so much of this depends upon the specific patternings with money that we notice within our families, within our own lived experiences. And if we know about it, the ancestral patternings that came before us, right? But there are a couple of more prominent patternings I notice specifically for women of color. And one of them is a pattern that I actually call ancestral assimilation. And this is something that is very lived for me. This is something that I've really needed to work on and unweave for myself. And it is basically, it's common among, it doesn't even need to just be women of color, anyone that's had a history of migration in their
Yes.
family, right?
Yep.
Because most people really.
Most people, yeah.
Yeah, but it tends to be most prominent for BIPOC folks
Yes.
whose families have needed to move from their country, their native country, to a Western country, right?
Yep.
And a lot of the time, families have done that for economic reasons,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they have certain economic aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
But in the process of doing that, they've had to let go of their parts of their own culture. They've had to separate themselves from their ancestral land.
Yes.
And they've had to take on the cultures, languaging, ways of operating, ways of like even the clothes that they wear, right? From that Western culture that they have moved into. And that is essentially called assimilation. It's a process of assimilation. And what happens in the process of assimilation is the patterning that our nervous system takes on is that I need to blend in. I need to become part of this culture in order to survive, in order to make money. I need to keep my head down and just fit in, right?
Yep.
And a lot of the women of color that come to me that have feel this calling to create a business, to be an entrepreneur, they're operating with that story playing out in their nervous system. And when we want to be an entrepreneur, we actually need to be willing to stand out. We need to be willing for our voice to be differentiated, right? And so that particular pathway goes directly against what you have learned about money and survival from your ancestry and from your family, right? And so actually there's this piece of us that really needs to begin to unweave that and step into this new story of like, the more differentiated I become, the more I can begin to actually thrive financially, right? So that's one particular patterning that shows up. And another patterning that's very, very common is what I call like the underdog patterning, right?
Oh,
where
I relate to that.
right. Yeah. Like I feel like you could definitely, like what you were sharing about your own history within your family, like we have this idea that money equals struggle.
Yes.
And we are always going to be the one on the outside struggling just to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And
the battlers in Australia, that's what we call them, the little Aussie battler. You know, it's actually called the
right.
underdog.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm
Yes.
fighting hard.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is built into toxic corporate capitalism, right? Toxic corporate capitalism can only work when people subscribe to this idea that their life, that their time is worth a very small amount of money, right? It's just how this system thrives, right? When we continue to subscribe to that idea. And, you know, so another aspect of this work that goes very deep is how do we begin to unweave that story and see that like your life force energy, your presence, your time is actually priceless.
Infinitely valuable. Yep.
Infinitely valuable. There isn't actually an amount of money that could ever really match up. Never. Right. And so actually there's this invitation to enter into a more spiritual relationship with money, where we're beginning to actually ask questions about what we are actually worth and how we want to be nourished by money. Rather than this idea of I am nourishing a financial system that was always set up to have me struggle, right? Have me struggle to just make ends meet. Right?
Keep me oppressed because then I'm easy to manipulate, right? That's the whole point. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then add some consumerism on top of it so that even when you do earn money, you're conditioned to spend it. Hilarious.
Yeah. And it's like just an absolute system that we have been operating under is, you know, everything about it has completely distorted our own perception of like our own value, how we get to charge, how we get to receive, how we get to be nourished, right? And so these are fundamental orientations that we need to unweave and reweave in completely new ways, right?
And it happens
with the nervous system. It happens in your body, right?
Yeah. Sorry, go. That's what I was going to ask about. I'm like, tell us more about because as you're talking about even the assimilation end of things, it's funny because not funny is not the right word. It's interesting because it connected to me. I am like super, super ADHD. And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of my own assimilation into neuronormative school, society, workplaces, etc. And going, as you're talking, I'm feeling in my body self-abandonment, because when you try, like that's what it feels like when you are continually saying my natural state or my natural way of being or my natural traditions, cultures, connection to land, etc., is not okay, or there's a better way to be, inverted commas, then it's setting your system up for ongoing self-abandonment. And I reckon that is the biggest thing that I've had to reweave and continue. It's like, oh, and there's another spiral, and there's another spiral. Like, here we are again at the beginning of the bloody thing, how many times? But I feel like so much of what we're talking about is taking the natural state of us, which is infinitely, intrinsically valuable with this beautiful something to share to the world, and saying, actually, no, what we need you to do is fit into a particular box, which is set up by a system of oppression, which you can never win in anyway, unless you're right at the top of the tree. And then make you feel bad about not being able to cope in the system. And it's like, oh my God, this is a clusterfuck from the very beginning.
Oh my goodness.
So tell us more about the somatic work, because I really want people to understand how this is not something to think through or
no.
It's stuck here, right?
Yes, totally. So our nervous systems, our bodies hold stories, right? And when I talk about the kind of ancestral work, what I'm really talking about is tapping into specific imprints that live in our nervous system. And just going back to that image of like a tapestry, right? Your nervous system is like a tapestry, and it's got all these different layers of like tapestries all on top of it. And we get to make decisions about which tapestries we are operating from and which we are not, right? And a lot of the time...
Hang on. Let's just let that sink in, everybody. Say that again. No. I don't mean... Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. That's very rude of me. But we get to choose. We get to choose, because that is a very different story to what we have sometimes been given in some different healing modalities, where it's like, this has been done to you and it's something that's, it's blah, blah, blah. It's like, we get to choose. Anyway, continue. Sorry. Just needed everyone to really absorb that.
I love that. Feel free to just like pause me at any point. I love that. And, I think those themes around sovereignty and actually getting to choose, we talk about them in so many areas of life, right? We talk about it in terms of our bodies, in terms of the way we eat, in all these different self-love areas. But one area that still seems to be very sticky for people is money, right? And actually the fact that we get to choose what our relationship with money is and how money gets to meet us. Right?
And how you want to be nourished. You like, I love the language. Like I said to you before we started recording, I was reading through your website, just going, this language is so gorgeous. Because nourishment and money very often do not appear in the same sentence. Like, there's not that many people that I know that would be like, money is a nourishing blah, blah, blah. Well, not many, but I love that in the choice. Not only do we get to say, that's not my story, this working hard and striving and sacrificing and bleeding myself dry and, being very extractive with our precious resources. But we also get to choose. I'm going to stop interrupting you, because this is going to be a 2-hour long episode. I'm sorry, but I love the way that you're explaining this.
Yeah. And, essentially that is what trauma is, when we are living into a story that we do not have a choice, right?
Mhm.
And so we need to go into the body and actually begin to understand at a sensational level what our felt experience with money actually is, right? So when I first started doing this work, when I was beginning to orient this idea that money was an entity and I had a relationship with it,
Yeah.
I'd put out like a £10 note on my
Yep.
desk, and I'd just sit with my body and I would notice what was happening.
Mhm.
And what I noticed was happening was the alarm bells were going off in my body.
Mhm.
I could not actually be in physical proximity with that money without all of these stories that were related to my trauma with money that I had imbibed from our culture, from my family, etc. They were going off. And it was just like, I am trying to start a business so that I can receive money.
This
And
is a
my
problem,
body,
people.
yeah, this is a problem. Like, there are all these alarm bells going off.
Mhm.
Where are those alarm bells coming from? What stories are they connected to? What tapestries are they plucking on, right? Because the more and more we can begin to be in relationship with those parts of us, and a lot of the time it will be to do with your ancestry, right?
Yes.
It will be to do with the ancestral memory that still lives in you.
Mhm.
The more we can begin to then create openings within our nervous system that allows for a felt experience of expansion with money that at the beginning feels very, very alien to our systems. And, women of color, like the kinds of imprints that run in the nervous systems of women of color are even more entrenched, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
this idea um, that money is essentially related to colonization,
Yes.
enslavement,
Mhm.
brutality, right? Being stolen from, because these are the histories that our ancestral body is rooted in.
Yeah.
And so we need to meet the grief of that too. We need to meet the grief of that. But on the other side of the grief is joy, is ecstasy, is expansion, right? But, it's a bit like that saying of like, the only way out of hell is like through it, right?
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
need, we need to go there.
Yeah.
And that's what part of this dismantling work is. It's about actually really facing up to what these systems have done to us.
Yeah. Mm.
Right. And what it's done to us at like a felt experience level, like
Yeah.
what done to our bodies, and how can we actually begin to do the revolutionary work of finding the openings, finding the desire, the joy, the longing, the yearning, finding those again, because they still live in us. Our
Yes.
ancestors would not have called us to this path if we did not have those pieces present in us. They've just been dormant for so long
Yeah.
but we are being called to actually wake them up again. Oh my God, I could just talk and talk and talk. So I'll
I know.
stop.
I could just listen and listen and listen, but I do need to go to bed at some stage today. No, as you're talking, because it, just the way that you're explaining things, I feel like sometimes when I'm listening to some people explaining somatic stuff, it can feel to me not as grounded as what I want it to be. I want it to be like, I understand it kind of out here, but how do I bring this into a felt sense? And as you're talking, when you say the opening, like I have I just this year went to a beautiful friend of mine who's a psychotherapist who studied under Diana Richardson, who's a Tantra teacher, and she teaches about the sacred feminine and tantric approach to menopause, which is amazing. Like I just went to this retreat, and I remember driving away from the retreat, and I just kept on, like it was just such a lush time away, and it was back somewhere where I used to live, so there was lots of remembering on that level, but also in circle, in sisterhood. And I live in a little country town. I'm like an alien because no one else has an online business, and I just am like, I need to find my people. Anyway, finally found my people. Didn't realize how thirsty I was on all levels, physically and mind, body, soul. But I remember getting into my car, and I was very conscious of like, I didn't want any sensory anything. I just wanted to marinate in this feeling. And I just remember driving I live in the country, like driving through these beautiful open, paddocks, etc. And I just kept on going, really, like that real, and I am a generator. So anyone who's into human design, they'll be understanding. And I can hear it every time I listen back to an episode that I record. I'm like, oh my God, stop saying, But to me, that feeling of just, it did feel like such an opening and a softness and a lack of anything protective. And we did a lot of big processing work, and there was a whole heap of stuff that kind of unraveled for me. But as you're talking, that the word opening is speaking to me more than some of the other explanations, is what I really want to say. When you first start working with clients where these imprints feel insurmountable, like that they're just the concept of having a sovereign, I am in choice. I can choose to have a nourishing relationship with my own worth, with money, with being seen, being heard, and it just feels not possible or too scary. Where do you start to even invite people into the possibility that no matter how insurmountable it feels, it is actually still something that can unravel? We keep coming back to the weaving language.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of this work is grief alchemy, right? It is grief alchemy, and actually really giving someone the space to fully feel the grief of what happened to them or their lineage, what the system had done to them, and really allowing for the space to feel that and be with that, I think can be one of the most powerful and transformative ways to begin to approach this work, right? Especially because, I do work with women of color who, a lot of the time, like when we go into spaces that are have been mainly designed for white people.
Yes.
There's this piece of us that feels like we don't get seen because actually the depth of grief that we're holding, it's not really being spoken to, right? A lot of people of like European descent, actually not always, right? This isn't always the case. Like it can be very specific, but there is more of a thread towards the accumulation of wealth, because that is what those lineages have become habituated to, like more of an accumulation of wealth, right? Whereas the lineages of a lot of women of color tend to be more focused on the fact that everything was taken away from us, right? Our land was stolen. Our cultures was taken away from us. We needed to assimilate and fit into another society and another culture in order to survive. And all of those stories come back online when you step into spaces that are designed for white folks, right?
Yeah.
And
like re-traumatization, really. It's just like again in the ocean again, and I'm still not heard and I'm still not seen. So my body's going to store up even more barrier, fear, protection.
Exactly. And most of the clients I work with have already invested thousands and thousands inside of coaching containers, but there is something so incredibly powerful and magical, and they all say this about being in a space that is devoted to holding women of color, because the depth of grief and the kinds of stories that are needing to come up in order for us to actually alchemize that and move towards this more revolutionary voice and vision that's living in you. It's so powerful to witness that emerging in community and really allowing that depth of grief to be witnessed by other women of color in a space, right? And so I guess like really the anchoring point when somebody's like, I don't even know where to begin, it's like, let yourself be witnessed in spaces that have the capacity to actually hold the depth of that grief and are able to understand that grief in the context of the systems that we have been born into, because that grief is not an individual burden. It's a grief that touches upon a collective grief, right? But when we actually come together as a collective and share that,
Mm.
it begins to lift. That is where the openings begin to, make themselves visible,
Yeah.
right? And it's through those openings that we can then begin to move the body at a sensation level into an experience of life, as life gets to be expansive, life
Yeah.
gets to be joyful, life gets to be me actually receiving from and being nourished by my existence, right? So
from overflow. That's what I keep just coming back to. It's like I
Yeah.
don't need to be living in a state of perpetual protection, exhaustion, assimilation into something that doesn't see, hear, feel, or even acknowledge that I exist half the time. And I just thought about something and I've lost my train of thought. Oh, I know. Because I know that you are also a storyteller, as you're talking, how much of, because this is what I noticed on this podcast and in other spaces where, women are speaking their truth, the truthiest truth, as I always say, like the depth of big, big stuff. And again and again and again, I see the power and the catharsis that happens when someone voices their story, and especially for the first time, and especially in a safe space. So I imagine storytelling is very much a part of the way that you hold space. Can you tell us what's been your experience of that? Is that
I can totally speak to that. So this kind of leans more into the spiritual strategic aspect of the work, right? And the word that I love to use is poetry, right? Because it's one thing to use language, but it's another thing to actually have language reflect the reality of your internal emotional landscape, right? And when we actually begin to use language in a way that's really connected to our hearts, right? It's like our throat and our hearts are connected up.
Yeah.
What happens is you use words that actually have a physical effect on another person, right? Like for example, when I was speaking earlier and you're like full body chills, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That was poetry. Like that was for the allowance of poetry. And a lot of the time, in order to allow that poetry to come up and to be expressed through us, we just need to get out of our own way, right? It's like
That's very true.
like just let yourself be human. Let yourself share like what is really on your heart. Like one question I always come back to is like, what do I actually want to say to people? What's actually moving through me? What's actually alive for me? What's true, right? What's on my heart? And the more and more we can orient like marketing, right? From that lens, the more our way of communicating and connecting with people lands like poetry in the bodies and the nervous systems of other people. And it's that felt experience, that felt impact that you have on others, which is the thing that people remember, right? Like they're not gonna connect to you at a deeply like spiritual soul level because you used a fancy word.
Nope.
They're gonna connect with you because you spoke from your heart, right? And you spoke that truth. And so, I think a lot of my containers are really designed to allow women of color specifically, but, I also work with non-BIPOC folks too, to actually use those containers as like practice grounds for doing this, right? Because
I love it.
we haven't been taught how to do this. We haven't been taught how to tell stories in a way that's like really connected to our hearts. That is not what our education systems taught us. So again, like this is revolutionary work.
Your worth is from your chin to the top of your head, not your heart. For God's sake.
Exactly.
Oh, my goodness. There's so much. There's so much I'm resonating with, and this is why I talk about the difference between copywriting and storytelling when you're marketing. So I'm like, do not use, like I always say, if you're this beautiful, like, I don't know, I always, when I'm working with a new copywriting client, they always feel like a texture or a color or something. I get a very specific sensation, right? And so sometimes I'll be in my first call with someone, and they're like, there's so much depth and gorgeousness about the way that they want, or the way that they work with people one-on-one. But when they start to write about it or try and speak about it, they're trying to do it in this vanilla box like container because someone gave them a framework that's XYZ. And I'm like, you are not magnetizing anybody.
Yes.
You're not magnetizing anyone. No one in the world wants to be spoken to like that. I don't care who you are, even if you are a bro marketer. Really, when it comes down to it, connecting with someone, and that's magnetism, right? And I will always say, like, if you are just true to your heart, exactly like you said, you are literally speaking to the right people anyway, because the non-right people, not the wrong people, but the other people aren't going to have that physical response to the way that you say that. I just, it's so much.
And I think the other piece that really comes up for me hearing you is when we speak from the heart, it creates space for grief within our brands, right? And a lot of the time, one of the kind of difficulties that women come to me with is like, I feel such deep grief for the world.
Yes.
How am I supposed to sell in this context, right? And it's like, well, actually, you allow your voice to occupy the full spectrum of your humanity. Correct. That's how you do it. Like, that's how you continue to run a business, even when the world is on fire, because, we have businesses. We can't just shut everything down and just be like Rex, like hiding under the bed covers. Like, that's not what we're here to do. Right. So what if we actually embraced the full spectrum of our humanity in the way that we're speaking about our work and what we are seeing in our visions, right? So that felt like a really important point.
Definitely. Absolutely. Because I do think because often, I don't know, I witnessed something the other day about someone that was really being torn down on social media for not saying something about something. I was just like, wow, we don't, like, I think we have to be really careful not to make the mistake of thinking that the little pieces of each other that we see when we're on social media is the whole picture and the whole felt sense of what is going on in the world. And also, just like you were saying, if we all stop, if all the healers, the helpers, the contribution people, the thought leaders, the paradigm shifters stop, how are we ever going to not be on fire? Like, how is the world ever going to be better, or at least heading in a different direction? Like,
right, exactly. And charge what would actually nourish you, right? Because you're setting an example of what this could look like, what this new paradigm could look like. And I think people forget that we are still in a very young industry.
Yes, we are.
Right? We are at the leading edge of what online business gets to look like.
Yeah.
And the people who go first are always going to get a bit of, they're going to get judged. They're going to get, because they're the ones doing things first, right? And there's going to be resistance to that. But like, run with it. Be okay with it. Like, be okay with being judged. And really claim what it is that you want, right? How you want to be nourished in the process of doing this work.
Yeah. I am in the middle of writing my third book, and I literally just wrote today a chapter called "You Have to Go First." Like, you get to go first. You have to go first. And it's like, whatever the edge of your work is for you that's the nervous system capacity receiving edge. It's also your visibility edges. It's all of those things. And if you really want to create change, and you've got this calling inside of you to get into that or step into the next evolution, you can't wait to be ready.
Yes.
You're never going to be ready. And also the flip side of that is always be supporting yourself and being in spaces where you can receive support when shit goes sideways. I want to talk about the containers that you have, because you have so many beautiful, oh my God, I'm in love with self-pages. But this is an example of exactly what you were talking about. So let's talk about, I know you have multiple things open at the time that this is coming out.
Yes.
Let's dive into
Yeah.
all of it.
Yes. Okay. Well, so the first thing is a freebie, actually. It is what I call the Ancestral Innovation Archetype Quiz. And who doesn't love a quiz,
Oh,
right?
I love a quiz. Love a quiz.
So this is for anyone who is a coach or a healer and is desiring to come into a bit of a deeper relationship with what that ancestral calling is, and actually who are the ancestors of your bloodline who are really desiring to be expressed through the vessel and vehicle of your business, right? And so there are specific archetypes around that, specific kind of ancestral roles and people within your lineage, and you can start to uncover that with the quiz. So that's a really great place to start. And I also have a membership that's called Kin Speak. So this is where it's a membership where you basically get podcast style transmissions from me, almost like literally like almost every day, sometimes like at least a few times a week, where I'm really speaking you through the remembering process across the seasons, right? And so we really talk about what does it actually mean to begin to remember your voice and your vision, and to actually express that out into the world in a way that is reverent of your body and reverent of your ancestry, and how we can do that while being in tune with the seasons, right? So
again, speaking my language.
so it's a really beautiful community of just incredible women from all around the world, and we have really deep conversations about business stewardship, collective liberation, human-centered strategy, allowing for the complexity and nuance of our own voices to occupy space, right? And really doing things in like a countercultural way within the business world, right? So that's a really beautiful, rich space. And then I have 2 specific containers for women of color. So my one-to-one container is called BIPOC and Bountiful. And that's a space that invites you to meet your business like an ancient woodland.
So much language that I'm like marinating in. My body's like,
yes, so much poetry. And then my group space is called the Sanctum. So this is a space for women of color to really bring their full humanity and allow that to be woven into their business, and to do so from this body reverent place, right? To actually allow you to begin to scale to 5-figure cash months in your business in a way that feels easeful for you, in a way that's actually beginning to do the revolutionary unweaving of these systemic stories that we no longer want to subscribe to, right? So those are my spaces.
I often, when I'm having like a conversation with someone who is also a healer, helper, coach, when they're talking about their offerings, I often have this like, we keep on talking about weaving, but I am just imagining you like the spider in the middle of the web, and all of those magical containers and all of the people in those magical containers who also have webs that are also just like like this. Oh, so beautiful. The ripple, the ripple. Where can we find you online, most importantly? Because I know there's going to be lots of people that will be clicking away to read this poetry and listen in.
So you can find me on Instagram at sacred.weaver. And from that point, you can,
go everywhere.
There's all sorts of places you can then.
And I already have that saved in the show notes already. So you definitely have that. You have just been, I knew this was going to be a special conversation, but thank you so much. I thank you for the work that you do in the world. And thank you for taking the time to help wrap language around some sometimes sticky concept in a way that I feel is very accessible. So amazing.
Thank you so much, Kylie. It's been an absolute pleasure. I just love these chats. I feel really fired up and inspired. So thank you.
This is the heart to throat thing too, isn't it? Like there's some magic that happens. After you've been able to voice things that are so good. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Wild and Finally Fucking Free. I'm Kylie, your host. And given that I know you would have enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor and subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow freedom seekers. Remember, being seen in all our mess and magic helps heal ourselves and the world, because the world needs more wild and finally fucking free humans. Have a great day.